I don't want to watch that again. That just kind of dried up my brain a little bit. Yeah.
S.W.Frost is now
Clappies, that
live
was
streaming Diablo 4
awesome.
digital scammers counter so far, so how do you like the expansion?
Evo ga. To voli da gleda.
Hello, I'm S.W.Frost, design director for Hunt.
Evo ti Makić pogledaj. Ne znam šta radi čovjek do duše. Možda malo na...
Tu sam ja nešto gledam ovih.
Evo ga, butmasti Nemac.
For your continued support and patience since the launch of 1896. We know the journey hasn't been without its bumps, and we truly appreciate your understanding as we work through the challenges. Your feedback has been invaluable, and we are excited to share the improvements and new content we've been working on.
On je imao 20 kila manje kad sam ja prvi put vidio pre 5-6 godina, znaš? Minimum 20 kila manje. Možda naći stari klip, znaš kako izgleda čovjek.
Each pact offers a unique playstyle and powerful traits, but it's new dark side powers that really stand out. First up, we're introducing Blast Sense. When used with a Pact of Omens, Blast Sense reveals the origin of nearby gunshots and explosions in Darkside, helping you to locate enemies from a distance. On top of that, we've got a conditional effect for Pain Sense, our new reimagination of Poison Sense, which now highlights enemies who are helping you to Omens. Blast Sense reveals the origin of. First up, we're introducing Blast Sense. When used with a Pact of Omens, Blast Sense reveals the origin of nearby gunshots and explosions in Darkside, helping you.
Wow. Samo što Darkside da pratiš gdje su bili pucnje eksplozije. Genial.
To locate enemies from a distance. On top of that, we've got a conditional effect for Pain Sense, our new reimagination of Poison Sense, which now highlights enemies who are bleeding, set on fire, or poisoned. For the Pact of Omens, it also highlights enemies who are out of stamina.
Ne, ovo ima toga.
Received a nice upgrade for the unique trait Gunrunner, allowing hunters to carry two large slot weapons at the same time.
Oh, Makiću. Slušaj, Makiću, novi trait da možeš donosiš dva oružja po 3 slota.
Video, evo gledam, 2 vera.
The Wilderness Pact is still focused largely around an evolution of Shoefoot that now also increases your crouch speed slightly, as well as the tried and trusted Beast Face conditional. However, solo hunters will be happy to hear that reduced crouch noise from the last event has now moved to Lightfoot regardless of chosen pact. Throughout the event, you'll have the opportunity to try out a range of new weapons. First up, we have the Maynard Sniper.
Gle sniper, oput stvarno izgleda dobro.
And the Auto 4 Shorty, which offers devastating close range firepower.
Evo ga, Auto 4 skraćeni.
And Centennial Pointman. These two medium slot weapon variants will add new dimensions to your loadout options. For those looking for something truly game-changing,
Mortar ručni.
the bomb launcher makes its debut, along with special items like
Vidim ja ovo da ovo polako sve više i više liči na ove igrice.
Kod.
Ma, kod, da, i ovo što si igrao na Blizzardovo ono govno i Deadlock i ostala govna.
Let's talk about something we are really excited to share with you. Bounty Clash, a brand new limited time game mode. This mode is designed for those of you looking for quicker, more intense PvP action. Bounty Clash brings one bounty token, one compound, 12 players in teams.
Slušaj da ti kažem, znači, oni ne mogu tebi, meni, Milanu i Borisu Gardinašu, ne mogu nama da prodaju igru opet. Mi možemo, a ne moramo da kupimo njihove DLC-eve sa skinima. Ja sam zadnji put kupio Bloodborne pre 3 godine i to nisam uzeo pomozi mi reći Battle Pass, nego sam uzeo neki skin. Znaš, pre 2-3 godine sam uzeo i to je bilo smešna cifra.
Vraćaju mapu, jel?
Jel? Ček da vidim, nisam dotle došao. Da vidimo.
15-minute time limit for an all-out fight to the finish. You'll spawn near a randomly selected compound with a dead boss target waiting.
Ne, ovo su ti compound, jel drugačiji, vidiš kako izgleda drugačiji.
Adding a layer of pressure as you try to balance offense and defense. Bring in your own hunters and get ready to go head to head in some of your favorite locations from Mammoth's Gulch and Stillwater Bayou, streamlined for this new experience. Bounty Clash will be available from October 16th to 20th, as well as every weekend from...
Bounty Clash mod počinje 16. a sutra je patch.
Don't forget to send us your feedback as we continue to evolve our new game.
Opet! Oh my god.
And speaking of Stillwater Bayou, for those of you who might have missed it, we've brought back this fan favorite map with a complete visual overhaul. The Stillwater Bayou map has been fully restored and updated with enhanced visuals, lighting and textures,
Šta je ovo?
with a fresh and eerie feel while staying true to its roots.
Evo, Stillwater.
Back into this iconic hunting ground with a whole new
Ali već smo igrali Stillwater, šta je sad?
attention to every mission, making every step through the bayou more dangerous
Nešto
than
su
ever.
spomenuli kao stability, to bi bilo sve.
Alongside Harvest of Ghosts, we are also re-releasing 3 beloved times of day: Sundown, Sunset,
Not ready yet.
and Foggy. These have been
magla.
to even more immersive experience.
Opet magla, a? Idika je.
To streamline your experience, both in terms of the UI
Ljudi su taman, ovi što nose snajperke su taman bili prodisali. Znaš što si imao samo dan noć, jevi ga. Sad imaš i maglu. Sad imaš i maglu.
Pomagli mnogo bolje radi igra.
This includes additional entries for recruiting free and all hunters with just one click. Charms
Evo ga, UI.
and can now be placed on any number of weapons once again. Additionally, we have tackled numerous bugs to improve stability and overall performance. For a full breakdown of what's been fixed, be sure to check out our
Need
patch
more
notes
time.
for version 2.1 once released. That's all for now, hunters. We're thrilled to celebrate spooky season with you, and we hope you enjoy everything we have in store. From the Harvest of Ghosts event to
Not
Bounty
ready.
Clash and tons of bug fixes and improvements. There's plenty to keep you on the edge while you hunt. As always, we deeply appreciate your support and feedback. Thanks again, and we'll see you in the
Not ready
mountains
yet.
and the bayou.
Not ready yet. Need time for that. Need more time.
Dobro, ne izgleda tako strašno je peč. Meni ne izgleda strašno, vama nemam pojma kako izgleda. A taj novi mod možeš da igraš i ne moraš.
Znam, nije mi zbog novog moda, nego...
Kao ljudi će se razvoditi? Ne,
Ne, nego i ovako ima
ali-
malo igrača.
ali ja i ne volim da se krvem s drugim igračima. Ako mi je svaka interakcija s drugim igračima trade, ja radije vjerujem da ne pucam ni u koga. Nego da ubijem bossa, ubijem zombije. Radije neću. Ako imaš mod da će ljudi da igraju PvP, izvolite igrajte. Nemojte da se ja zaustavljam.
Stigla si. Vidjela scenu.
I'll do what I can.
I will handle it.
Strength in numbers.
War 3 is a game where you can socialize with your neighbors, build
Ali glupa im je ta fora, trebali su stave da te ne košta ništa da uđeš u taj mod. Da imaš 3-4, pa kada se košta te da kupiš jedan od ovih YouTube kreatora i likova koji također streamuju, ovaj Calamity, on je dao dobru obzervaciju.
Need more time.
Dosta ljudi su retardirani, ja se izvinjam ako ćemo da se sad ljutiš što ću ovo reći. I treba im stamina shot, regen shot, antidote shot, odmah doping na početku
Not
meča.
ready yet.
Odmah doping. Ako uzmeš jedno od ta tri, ok. Ako uzmeš sva tri na početku meča, onda to ti je $300 iz džepa svaki meč čim prođe loading screen. I to ljudi, razumeš, iskoriste kao buff. A dešava se da pogineš u prvih minut i po 2. zato što se ekipa spawnala pored tebe i zato što je, ne znam, ono, Milan je digao ptice i pretrčao kao idemo gas, kao nema vremena i digao sve živo i ko ide zadnji u koloniju on će dobiti metak kučala. Razumeš? Zašto su pustili ovoga da prođe što diže buku i ubili su tebe ko ideš zadnji, na primjer. Jer je ovoga u sredini su ubili. I pogineš u prvih minut 2 meča. Šta bi s onih $300 što si dao samo za buff? Ništa. To ti samo za buff. To je buff. Daje ti health regen, stamina i imunost na otrov. Znači bez oružja, bez lovca. A da opremiš prosječnog lovca, da ga kupiš od $150 do $300. Čini mi se tako ide nešto.
Više, brate, šta, $300 ti samo loadout.
To da kupiš lovca.
Puške su ti jebi go.
Zavisi od loadouta. Koliko voliš skupe loadout. Imaš ljude koji vole da uzmu recimo skup shotgun i recimo uppercut. Uppercut je skoro $400. I taj čovjek će da uđe u taj team deathmatch sa loadoutom koji je, razumeš, košta $1000. I poginut će odmah, bukvalno. Odmah. Čim starta meč, ako mu ekipa nije sinhronizovana, razumeš? Ušao čisto ono kao iha boys, kao ajmo, kao idemo, znaš, ono kao da se puca, znaš. I nađe ekipa koja mnogo, recimo, igra ono suptilnije, ima bolje pozicioniranje i koknu ih. I prvih minut, razumeš, pošto je jako mala mapa, za minut pogineš. Dok ni ne poradi taj buff. Brzo će ljudi siromašiti igraći to, ali to nije moj problem. Meni je fino što su dali ljudima opciju kako će da igra multiplayer. Ali je kazna za neuspeh dosta jaka, razumeš?
Dobro, daje ti apoteku, jebi ga, nije da te ne daje prednost. Znači, ono, ako ne umeš to da iskoristiš tu prednost, da, onda sleduje to što si sad pomenuo.
Mislim, možeš ti bez svega toga da igraš. Jer pošto je jako mala mapa i nema tu šta da se ubija puno zombija tebi, jer ti stvarno treba neograničena stamina na, ne znam, 10 minuta. Ili ti doljan jedan trait, imaš 2 traita, jedan za trčanje, drugi za melee.
Da, ali uzmeš tu staminu i ne moraš da koristiš trait slot.
I jeste, ali... ajde, dobro, ajde. Ako tako kažeš. Ja bi sve uzeo trait. Ale... Zato što mogu da nosim drugi konzumable, mogu da nosim eksploziv, mogu da nosim kutiju s municijom, razumeš? Čekaj. Sam aktivirao? Što me ovo jebe? Jesam. Jesam.
Zatamljeno i tako da bi rekao da jesi.
Ne, pojavilo se na mapi. Kao Dungeon Sleepless Hollow. Od samo da otvorim, evo ovako nešto da uradim. I da se vratim nazad. Za moje džabe Paragone, razumeš što je džabe, Bogu je drago. Nije džabe, koštalo me 3-40 evra. Jel, nije baš džabe. Toliko je koštala ekspanzija.
Nije, tvoje koštalo više, tvoje koštalo...
Ne smiš. 50. Ne znam koliko sam plaćao. Nije.
600 i nešto hiljada je tvoja, mislim.
Čega 600.000? 600.000.
600, nije 600, 600.
Pa tako.
600 i nešto.
Ne bi. Pogledam u store. Store, shop. Dobro, kad prestaneš da mešaš karti, javim se.
Obično je valjda 4 i 600, ovo tvoje je 6 i nešto.
Expansion. Deluxe. Samo usetim šta Deluxe staje.
Deluxe je teo za to.
Nije mi bilo do ovih krila i do 3000 poena i do portala i... Još kada dobiješ tigra, ali... Boli me kurac za to. I gdje je treći cvet, to ću sada se otelim, tražeći cveće. Ja. Ima jedan quest ovdje gore iz, mislim da je Skosglen, gore jednom gradu. To je pradobalan grad i tu imaš kao quest da tražiš kosu od Vrejta. Mislim da je tako neka nebuloza bila. I ideš po nekim razrušenim ukletnim kućicama i klikćeš na neku pauču i skupljaš kao tu kosu. I toga tada skupiš 5-6 komada, ali ne vidi se, bukvalno pixel hunting, razumeš. I sve kuće su onako, razumeš, kao gomile kamenja. I nekad nije jasno gdje možda uđeš, gdje ne možeš. Tu sam gubio, svaki put kad radim taj quest sa drugim karakterom, ako će ga raditi, znači izgubim 5 minuta više nego što bi trebalo normalno. Na pixel hunting. A ovo je živ, a? Samo pao na guzicu. Okej.
Nemoj se te knockdownove, pa se malo iznenadiš kad ih vidiš da su dole, ono skroz...
Pa...
Ne računaš na to.
Pa ne računam, ali ono, u suštini piše. Piše na... Jedan level toga da je. Gorilla skills, increase damage to knockdown, ne. Mislim da generalno gorilla skillovi koji imaju takav da ih nokuju. Kolika je šansa ne znam, ali znam da ima. S tim u vezi... A viš nema. Nema. Mislim da imaš ono centipede, gorila i recimo jaguar kao male nodove, nemaš. Ima ovdje. Ima ovaj potent. Ima ovaj. I ovaj neki gorila buff. Da. Sad ide mini igra odakle da povučem poena. Ne znam kako sam se ovoga setio, osjetio se. Ajde, probamo sad. Evo ga, jebote, stoji ispod demona. Pod guzice mu stoji.
Not ready yet.
Ti bud pamet.
Need more time.
Help! I beg you!
Need more time.
Dobro večer.
O, vratio se Boris.
Over here! Help!
Šta ima?
Not ready
Šta si
yet.
pogledao? Šta kaže naš litijumski?
Ne gledam Aleksandra Litijevskog, gledam Srce od kamena.
Šta je to?
Not ready
Heart of
yet.
Stone. Pa akcijni film sa ovom Gal Gadot.
O,
Ona je izraelska glumica.
Da,
o majko
Not
je
ready
jedan.
yet.
Ogavno.
tako.
Nije baš toliko,
Jevrej.
nije baš
Židovka.
toliko ružno. Malo poštovanja prema ženama koje služe godinu i po, 2 vojni rok.
Židovka, što bi rekao
Need
Nenad.
more time.
Baš čeliče, živ li si baš čeliče?
Imaš... Bolje da mu ne kažem. Vidjet će sam. Vidjet će sam.
Ajde, reci, nemoj da fantaziraš.
Imaš klip, onaj Denis, onaj bucmasti, onaj Nemac iz Krajteka bacio je update za novi patch od sutra koji treba doći.
Dobro, i?
Pa pogledaj. Imaćeš NPR trade s kojim ćeš moći da vidiš u Dark Side-u gde se puca u daljini.
Need more time.
To ti je ono,
Sjajno.
to ti je jedan od...
Meni ovako vidiš daljine, tako da to ništa novo nije.
Imaćeš trade s kojim ćeš moći da nosiš 2 oružja koja zauzimaju 3 slota.
I imat ću možda
He left to find
mogućnost da ne igram i dalje, jer mi ne radi hunt kako treba.
Pa tačno.
Our ancestors say that Lakuni ritualists carve out the hearts of true warriors, scarring them. To find our dead with a missing heart was an honor, but Papa does not need to prove it. Papa has taught me all there is to know of the Lakuni. They watch you. Within killing one, teaches the next to change tactics.
Need more time.
Nisam primetio da je manji D5, čak mislim da je veći. Sve sam ranije radio, konji ne.
O, Blanchard.
Not ready yet.
Kako?
Not ready yet. Need more time.
Manje više znam kako da rešim resist za Torment 3. Sa onim jedan blessingom mogu lagano. Mislim da na samo patikama ima 35-40% hold resist.
Need more time.
Kino me nerad.
Need time for that.
Ko to zna?
Not ready yet. Need more time. Not ready yet. Need more time. Need more time. Need more time.
Is the only faction that allows you to lobotomize your own soldiers and genetically modify them so extensively that they turn into a writhing tower of flesh which is simply too ugly to die. Today, we will utilize the power of gene splicing along with a complete disregard for side effects to create the ultimate life form and conquer our enemies. But first, a word from our sponsor. GamerSupps is a company which sells some of the finest legal energy supplements in the world, but perhaps even greater than that is their relentless assault on your ability to be a normal person, because they have invested tens of thousands of dollars into the science of sexualizing plastic cups. Nothing and no one is safe from their reach, but we might be able to take control. Use code Reggie for 10% off, and if we buy enough products, maybe, just maybe, they'll let me design my own totally platonic and safe for work cup. Thank you, GamerSupps. Now back to the video. Welcome to the snow-covered wastelands of a place which is called Kislev, but which we all know is simply Eastern Europe. True to form, these tundras are inhabited exclusively by 17th century Russian nobility and recently paroled sex offenders. As such, its main exports are bad haircuts, class warfare, and uncomfortable conversations. But perhaps the greatest downside to living in Kislev is that every battle appears to be taking place inside of a used toilet bowl. However, that's exactly the kind of environment you'd expect someone named Throt the Unclean to thrive in, and thrive we will. Our goal is to transcend the weakness of our genetics by responsibly using science to ethically create the perfect organism. The only issue is that the more we edit our chromosomes, the greater our risk of developing this unfortunate condition called genetic instability. It's a pretty mild disorder. Your chance of survival is about the same as getting shot in the head, because the main symptom of this condition is immediate and rapid physical disintegration. And if you take it too far, genetic instability turns into explosive instability, which causes your anatomy to detonate on contact with the enemy. We could work on a cure, or we could just push you down a garbage chute and try again, because by pressing this button, we can literally recycle you. This is done through the use of the growth vat. You can think of it like a compost pile for people. I'm going to try to make a unit with the maximal amount of genetic modifications, and according to my calculations, the chance of doing that successfully is approximately 0.03%. So, you know, we're going to be doing a lot of recycling. But before we can spit in the face of statisticians everywhere, we need a plan to expand our empire. And when it comes to plans, there's nothing a rat loves more than a little cheese. The first step is to go south and capture this settlement. We engaged in a close battle, but thanks to my tactical brilliance, I managed to kill almost everyone in my army on turn 1. By Skaven standards, this is considered very impressive. Following this, we spent 5 turns converting the entire population of Fort Stragov directly into food. The legality of this maneuver is up for debate, but when you physically consume the victim, witnesses, and all evidence of a crime, I think you're in the clear. It's around this time a man displaying every known symptom of the bubonic plague will declare war on you. But you can ignore that and instead focus on speed-running homelessness by traveling to your capital city, demolishing it, and resettling it on the next turn, using all of your stockpiled food to rebuild it at level 4. Now I know you're thinking, but Reggie, won't your population enter a profound state of starvation since you've used your entire food supply on a fancy building? The answer is yes, but also I don't care, because by turn 10 we will have access to late game units such as rat hydras, and we're going to need them because Sarina just declared war on us. And after careful carefully inspecting this balance of power, I've concluded that to be very concerning. So what we're going to do is isolate ourselves inside Hell Pit for 5 turns, and re-emerge with a slightly unfair army. As I waited out the turns, I began to grow worried, because we were quickly becoming surrounded by a horde of angry Russian Gopniks who wanted nothing more than to redistribute my wealth. Maybe spending the first 10 turns killing my own army, demolishing my capital city, and starving my population wasn't such a good idea. Speaking of bad ideas, Serena decided to channel the spirit of communism by death-marching her army straight into my capital city 3 times in a row. Normally, this battle would be somewhat challenging. However, my tier 4 garrison is actually better than either of our armies, so it was fairly easy. Enjoy this moment while it lasts, because it will probably be the only time we achieve anything other than a Pyrrhic victory in this entire campaign. With the Ice Queen fended off, we emerged from our chrysalis, now armed with catapults, flamethrowers, and plenty of these bad boys. They might not look like much, but with a little genetic modification, we can give them the cellular instability perk. If you're having trouble killing any given unit, simply activate this ability and you'll find the fight a lot easier when your enemy is missing most of their limbs. With the power of quadruped suicide bombers, we were able to expand outward, even completing this quest battle and acquiring Gorich, a unique hero who is 12 parts anabolic steroid to 1 part everything else. I don't think I can properly explain just how violently this man would kill you, but if you can imagine being pulled apart by meat hooks, then you're on the right track.
Need more time.
After a few more turns, we managed to gain some territory, but we were in a difficult situation. To our left was the spokesperson for radiation poisoning, and to our right was an AI doing their best impression of Joseph Stalin. So I bought some cannons for the Second Army and sent it to defend the Western Front. Meanwhile, Throt engaged in various battles to the south, including this one, which was not fun, because despite having access to several powerful units, there is a resource which is fundamentally inaccessible to us, and that resource is leadership. In fact, every Skaven battle has 2 distinct phases. Phase 1, where you actually play the game, and Phase 2, where you spend 90% of your time scanning the periphery of the map in an attempt to stop your units from deserting you at the slightest conceivable inconvenience. Compounding this issue is the fact that Kislev units are objectively monotonous to fight against, because each and every one of them is experiencing a crippling identity crisis, where they can't decide if they want to crush you with a mace or shoot you in the neck with a flintlock pistol. This makes them supremely unsatisfying to interact with, because it feels like every unit just does the same thing. If we liken a diverse army, such as this, to a delicious and well-decorated cake with various flavors, then the Kislev army is that same cake after it has been beaten with a sledgehammer to the point of becoming a homogeneous sludge. Seemingly, the only units that don't struggle with this brand of dysphoria are the polar bears that will inevitably flank you and rip out your carotid artery, which is a nice touch, but I just wish that having a large mammal violently chew through my neck veins wasn't considered the highlight of my day. So to conclude my unsolicited review of the Kislev race, I give them a 1 out of 10. Regardless, winning these battles put us in a very strong position, because we're now within striking distance of the capital city of all of these godless sodomites. Soon, Ratkind will prevail. However, things weren't going so good on the Western Front. Leukemia Man decided to attack my second army. The auto-resolve thinks we're going to lose, but when you're playing Skaven, the accuracy of auto-resolve is about on par with the accuracy of a schizophrenic witch doctor who is covered in chicken blood, so I thought I could take him. But I was horribly wrong, because after approximately 3 minutes of fighting, my Skaven slaves were being violently domesticated. My cannons had been flanked by snow leopards, and my archers were doing this. Moments like these remind me that my personal battle against autism is not going very well. So, the Great Orthodoxy made a generous contribution to population control on our behalf, but that's okay, because as fast as you can kill my armies, I can make 3 more. By this point, we had managed to completely isolate Kislev and drain most of its resources. All that's left now is to hire a warlock engineer, run him over to Kislev, and use this ability to produce an earthquake that will destroy most of their walls. You know it's a good earthquake too, because the engineer dies in the process. Following this, Throt besieged the settlement and started starving them out. Once they were looking particularly anemic, we completed an auto-resolve and Kislev was officially ours. Now unrestrained by our abusive alcoholic neighbors, I gazed upon the world map to see what diplomatic opportunities await, and I quickly realized that everyone who isn't a disfigured abomination absolutely hates us. But that being said, we did have some friends, and they started pushing south into Empire territory. The Empire, even in its incomplete form, is strength rank 2, and I want absolutely nothing to do with that. So instead, we traveled northeast and started bullying this guy for looking like a fucking idiot. This man looks like a child, and as it turns out, he has roughly the same combat effectiveness, because when I shot him with a cannon, he stopped moving. Now, it's been about 10 turns since I've done anything extraordinarily stupid, so I decided to change that by purchasing the Clone Warfare Doctrine, which makes all of my Skaven slaves acquire 3 random mutations. Depending on how successfully they mutate, they will either gain superpowers, or their bodies will start violently self-destructing. This is objectively bad, but also mildly entertaining. Following this, and perhaps because of it, the Empire decided it was time to perform a late-stage abortion on us using the medically correct device known as a mortar battery. With war declared, I shifted my attention south to find 5 Empire armies absolutely salivating at the thought of bashing my head in. I needed to equalize the numbers, but money was tight, so I just recruited 2 full armies of Skaven slaves. The plan is to use them to literally absorb all the enemy's ammunition and then tire them out in melee combat. And before you ask, no, I don't feel bad, because if they didn't want this to happen, they shouldn't have put the phrase expendable meat shield on their resume. With our preparations now complete, we entered into an absolutely massive battle against the humans, with each side deploying 5 full armies for a total of over 7,000 people. Victory here could secure us a path into the Empire, and defeat would probably set us back about 20 turns. So here's the plan. Step 1, use my failed science experiments to physically disgust the opponent. Step 2, create a formation of people that actually matter atop of this hill and use my poison wind mortars to harass the enemy on approach. Step 3, have a panic attack from trying to manage 4,000 units. And then the most important step of all, Step 4, locate the enemy leadership and right-click on them with Gorich. After about 30 seconds of socializing with Gorich, the enemy heroes display a strong proclivity towards bleeding to death. The battle unfolded, and it was utterly gruesome. Within 2 minutes, the hill we were holding looked closer to a mass grave than an active battlefield, with wave after wave of humans crashing against our line, only to be enveloped by a horde of rats and eaten alive. Every so often, they would deploy some mortars to try to bombard us, at which point I'd use my rat ogres to absolutely flatten them. It was like watching a truck crash into an occupied hospital bed. Overall, the lines were holding well, and eventually, after 15 minutes of fighting, the day was ours. Sure, every single Skaven slave died, but most of them were so terminally ill that this whole thing could probably be considered an elaborate form of euthanasia. The combined casualties came out to about 4,000, which caused the Empire to drop from rank 2 to 17, and we went from rank 14 to 45. Real nice. Definitely feel like a winner now. In the wake of this battle, Throt was able to plow deep into Empire territory, expanding our borders like an errant stream of piss. This caused just about every human in existence to declare war on me. If I focused my entire military in this region, I might be able to hold the lines, but the issue was that this deranged proto-human was still alive and destroying my settlements to the north. I redirected 2 armies to deal with him, and eventually managed to trick him into leaving his capital city, which I then attacked. If we use the auto-battler, we'll probably lose, and that's because using the auto-battler is a lot like smoking crystal meth out of the barrel of a loaded shotgun. It's convenient and exciting, but sometimes just not worth the risk. So we did this fight manually, and absolutely decimated his garrison with our mortar teams. This was basically a death blow to his empire, and I found killing him so personally satisfying that I saved the replay so I could cherish and relive this moment forever. So let's regroup here. Our objective is to create the perfect life form, and I've tried. In fact, we're on the 11th generation of test subjects. However, it's hard to justify spending valuable resources on a project with a 99% chance of giving my soldiers brain damage. So until we defeat the Empire, we're going to focus on just creating good soldiers rather than trying to brute force a perfect one. For example, I worked out a rat ogre build where I replace all of their skin with mammoth hide, replace their blood with high-octane gasoline, and force them to ingest a parasitic worm that causes them to become undead. This, along with a few other minor procedures, effectively turns them into unstoppable killing machines. With the Russians now defeated, we can focus these monsters entirely on the humans. The campaign was going pretty well, and the whole experience reminded me why I love playing Skaven. The ridiculous contraptions and absurd strategies make you feel like a cartoon character, but with gore turned on. Not only is it possible for you to slowly flatten an elderly woman using a mobilized bell you dislodged from a nearby clock tower, it's actually one of the more normal things you can do. So needless to say, the Empire was feeling the pressure, so much so that they ended up calling in their friends for help. And what fearsome allies did Carl rally against me? Well, a fucking tree and a short guy. I don't think Carl has many friends, and he's about to have even less because his barely animate companion just ran headfirst into an army of flamethrowers. Meanwhile, the dwarves actually killed one of my armies, which is really unfortunate for them because now I have to introduce them to Rodney. With most units, there is some part that isn't dangerous, but with Rodney, everything will kill you. He's covered in spikes, his entire body is swinging and gyrating around wildly, and if any part of him even touches you, it could best be likened to being hit with a bag full of cinder blocks. So anyway, they died. After assimilating the resources of Carl's friends, our faction had become so powerful that beating him up was starting to feel like beating up someone with cerebral palsy. And as I'm sure you know, after a few minutes, that experience becomes very unrewarding. But I refused to let the physically disabled rob me of the joy of victory, so I decided to fire another bullet into the still twitching corpse of morality by spending 1,000 gold to develop biological weapons, which I then deployed in Carl's capital city. This was not tactically necessary, but it was kind of fun. I enjoyed watching it spread through his territory, decimating his economy and slowly decomposing all of his armies. The plague was so virulent that it even started killing the French, which caused them to declare war on me. I viewed this as a win-win scenario. I had fun watching Carl writhe around on the ground like some kind of dying centipede, but I decided it was time to put him out of his misery. I went to Altdorf, sacked it for 30,000 gold, and then settled it as a level 1 Skaven city. That's a pretty humiliating way to lose your capital city, and I wouldn't be surprised to see a notification about Karl Franz dying of a drug overdose on the next turn. With the old world now under our control, I began pumping my soldiers full of mutagens, hoping that even one of them would transform into something other than a burden to society. The next 20 turns consisted of slaughtering the French, growing new monsters in a petri dish, and having a member of the Chinese mafia try to extort me for 3,000 gold. I said no, he said I'll kill you, and then I pointed out he's 3,000 miles away, checkmate Jackie Chan. Just to prove a point, I also decided to ambush one of his trade caravans, which was carrying 11,000 gold. I know the sight of me grabbing a civilian's head and slowly crushing it with my bare hands looks bad, but it's actually okay because these people are communists, and what they need most of all is freedom. And as an advocate of freedom, I am morally obligated to extend to them the compassionate hand of freedom by balling it up into a fist and punching them in the face with it repeatedly until they submit and conform to my political ideologies, which is a roundabout way of saying I just wanted 11,000 gold, but I digress. After countless trips to the recycling bin, we were on attempt 28. It was promising. We got him all the way to 10 augments. All I have to do now is administer the ultimate mutagen. What is the ultimate mutagen?
This is cum!
It's basically a loot box of chromosomes because it gives him 3 random mutations. I crossed my fingers and performed the procedure. It was a success. Joey28 officially had 8 mutations, which gave him a total of 17 augments. According to my research, this is the maximum amount possible. Or maybe I just made that up, who knows? Regardless, I think he's perfect. So ladies, like it or not, this is what the ideal male physique looks like. A badly mutated rat man with mammoth skin, diabetic neuropathy, propane sweat glands, and some kind of brain parasite. Have I broken several international laws in the creation of this creature? Yes, but in the eyes of God, I am amongst him, because Joey28 is the perfect organism, and he's arrived just in time, because it is officially the end of the world. The wild hunt has begun, and the Wood Elves have decided the best way to protect the environment is through homicide. 2 sets of Wood Elf armies spawned at the Enchanted Forests in my territory. They look pretty formidable, but I know a thing or two about Wood Elves. You have to avoid fighting them on their home turf. In fact, fighting Wood Elves is a lot like fighting children. You can't just rush into the kindergarten winging haymakers. It's not tactical, it lacks nuance. In my experience, you'll find a lot more success luring them into the parking lot where you can ambush them with your friends. So that's exactly what we did. To the Wood Elves. I had a few armies wait for them to leave the forests, at which point we cleaned them up in a nice open field where they couldn't pull too many of their tricks. This whole wild hunt thing isn't so bad, I thought out loud. Well, imagine my surprise when, on the next turn, I found a conga line of war criminals making their way into my territory. Yeah, that's like 10 armies, with more being pumped out from these forests every turn. I mobilized my forces, but in the meantime, the Wood Elves were destroying pretty much everything south of this line. I don't know what fascist dictator is responsible for this, but I really really don't like this version of the Wood Elves. Fortunately, the old world has a high concentration of castles, which slowed them down, and after a few turns, my armies began sweeping through the war-torn regions. I was engaging them in 2 to 3 battles per turn, and Throt was doing fine, but my weaker armies were being devoured alive by the feral elves. Thankfully, I did some experimenting and found that the Wood Elves are surprisingly vulnerable to having a cask of acid smashed over their head, and that's very good news for us. I had my armies outfitted with some of these mortar teams, and we started making some real progress. Additionally, I had some allies in the area that were able to defend the Eastern Front. This was quite helpful, but perhaps the biggest break was this random event. It increased our chances of ambushing the elves, which allows us to position our armies like this, and their army assumes the position of a man who is about to receive a violent prostate exam. All I can say is that this was an extremely cathartic experience. From here, my military philosophy is as follows. I have 60,000 gold, and I'm guessing the Wood Elves do not, because upon reviewing their economic infrastructure, I found only mud huts and strange men tweaking on crystal meth. Therefore, I don't believe they can keep up this pace, so I'm going to enter a financial deficit to field just enough armies to gradually grind our enemies to dust, under the assumption that they won't be able to replenish their ranks. Over the next 10 turns, I managed to slowly claw back my territory from the elves. I even had time to quell a rebellion from Krekronid of the Black Chasm. Who is Krekronid of the Black Chasm? Only the finest collector of level 1 archers in the entire world. And this, I had to congratulate him on personally. By this point, we've unified our eastern, western, and central fronts, effectively pushing the Wood Elves back to this choke point. Around this time, my allies declared war on Vlad von Karstein and asked me for help. Confused and clearly busy, I said no. In hindsight, this was the wrong response, because apparently it was a social faux pas on par with pouring lubricant on a wheelchair ramp. Within 2 turns, the entire world was so disgusted by my actions that 17 different people canceled their trade deals with me, including Vlad, costing me thousands of gold per turn. Furthermore, a couple others just outright declared war on me. So needless to say, we're on our own from here. With our armies now unified, we pushed through at Helmgart and even repelled 1,800 elves on the next turn. After this victory, the Wood Elves attempted to call time out by issuing a press release that the Wild Hunt was over. Sorry guys, I'm afraid that's not how this works, because my Wild Hunt is just beginning. Briefly regrouping at Parabon, I took stock of the situation. We have 5 armies. Throt, specializing in giant monsters, Snickich with assassins, Bok and Ixstone are bringing in the siege weapons, and finally Bilefitch has every known flavor of Rat Ogre. Rat Ogres with flamethrowers, tasers, Gatling guns, and even Rat Ogres covered in sheet metal. Comparatively, the elves don't have as much, but they are in the forest, and fighting a Wood Elf in the forest is like fighting an Italian in a spaghetti factory. Thousands of years of evolution have rendered them perfectly optimized for combat in that environment, so they're still fairly dangerous. The first battle was against Durthu at Waterfall Palace. I stormed the field with my monsters, and the elves adopted this strategy of shooting us from behind a wall, which was smart until the wall broke. I can guarantee you they weren't feeling so smart then. Meanwhile, Durthu was waiting alone at the top of the mountain, as if he was expecting a fair and honest duel with Throt. Instead, I had 4 assassins stab him to death. The first battle was behind us, and it really sucks fighting in this environment, so I took a great satisfaction in auto-resolving my way to the final forest. It's being guarded by Orion and a few others, but at this point, we have the momentum, we have the numbers, and most importantly, we have Joey. We gave these drug-addled freaks the beating that their parents should have given them 30 years ago. I mean, we really put a pounding on their ass. Gorich, Joey, Throt, it's going to take the Wood Elves years just to learn how to walk again. And as I stood there in a burning forest, surrounded by thousands of dead elves, I knew I had done the right thing, because the Wild Hunt is finally over. Sure, it cost me 10,000 gold per turn, and I'm at war with everyone from the Triads to literal demons, but all of that pales in comparison to the fact I have killed all Europeans, become God, and saved the world. I really couldn't ask for a better legacy. And with that, I feel Throt has achieved his goals and his purpose in life is complete. So that's it for this video. Feel free to check out the second channel where I'll be posting some of my extra content. Big thanks to this month's patrons for supporting the channel, and finally, thank you for watching.
Need time for that. Need more time. Not ready yet.
Diablo 4's expansion, Vessel of Hatred, as well as Season 6 have been out for 3 days at this point. It's the 11th. It came out on the 7th for me. And as it stands, I am in Torment 4. I have defeated all of the bosses you can do, everything from Torment 4 Lilith to all of the ladder bosses solo. I've done the Dark Citadel with the team on Tier 4. I've got to like 85 of the pits. I got to like 192 of the Paragon. Hit for 1.5 billion damage, which you might think, wow, that's a ton of damage, especially after a stat squish. But with the Spiritborn, I'm seeing people hit upwards of 300 billion damage. The class is absolutely nutty and very enjoyable. But let's talk about the current state of the game now that I've had the chance to play the in-game quite a bit and how I'm feeling about it. Now, the first thing we have to talk about, and I mentioned this in my first impressions, but it's worth reiterating, is that the progression and itemization of the game now in its current state is significantly different. And in my opinion, this is one of the biggest improvements that they have made with the game since the launch. Originally, at the start of the game, you felt like the world tiers almost didn't matter. You would start in what was basically World Tier 2, and then you would be in World Tier 3 for a very short period of time using Sacred Gear, which didn't feel very good because it's just a stopgap measure until you get Ancestral Gear in World Tier 4. And you would blast right through World Tier 3, you get to the end of World Tier 4, and then your progression basically stops. You put on Ancestral Gear, and then it's sort of just min-maxing. Maybe you're finishing your level 100 and the grind wasn't very satisfying. Now they've added these torments. So Torment 1 basically unlocks everything. Torment 2, 3, and 4 are pretty big gaps in terms of progression where you're continuing to min-max your gear further and further, but it also comes with additional drops in terms of gold experience and chances to get better gear. And there's quite a gap between 3 and 4. So as you're pushing through these, you actually do feel a push back from the minions, and you do feel the power progression. I will say that Torment 4 definitely has a significant ramp up from 3. Like there's a pretty big gap there between 3 and 4. You can go from like dominating 3 to getting like one shot in Torment 4. So that one is going to catch some people off guard. But I also like the way they reduce your armor and resistances. So not only are you having to focus on offensive power, but you're kind of having to play the mini game of making sure your resistances are good, or just getting a greater affix resist all in like the, a Tyro's Might or something to basically solve this. But I do find myself actually caring about defenses way more than I have previously, and the progression and itemization is actually something I'm enjoying, as previously it was something that was like actively hurting the experience. This has been significantly improved now, and it's an enjoyable part of the game. Now, there is a part that people currently aren't liking in the season, and that will be the gatekeeping of Forgotten Souls. But as of me actually making this video, they just hotfixed and increased the drop rate of this. This is basically the bottleneck to do things like masterworking or re-imprinting, etc. So they've been raising the drop rates in order to solve this issue.
Not ready yet.
Tempering was also something that was an issue in some of the previous seasons, from Season 4 when they reworked itemization, because you could basically brick items by tempering and getting the wrong one like 5 times in a row, which would piss people off. But now you have these Scroll of Restorations, which are decently common, that you can go to re-roll once again the tempers, and basically bricking has been all but resolved at this point. One of the other things worth noting is by time you do the expansion and you finish the campaign and it dumps you out in the game, you're about level 45.
Not ready yet.
Now, typically in the original launch of the game, you would be about level 45, 46, but the cap was 100. Now with the max level being 60, you're significantly closer to being at the portion of the game where you're more in-game or mid-game, like the portion where you start going and free roaming the map to do the various activities, and there's more activities to do now. We'll talk about that in just a second. So the campaign actually does a better job at pacing you into the portion of the game that you should be doing by time you are over and completed with the campaign because of the lower level. This is something I noticed where before, when I did the campaign, because I replayed the campaign back in the day before the level cap decrease and everything to see exactly how I felt, but you would play the campaign for like 20 hours or 12 hours, 14 hours or something like that. It was a long campaign, the original one. But then you would immediately go and just like grind Hell Tides for like forever, basically. It felt like you were dumped out of the campaign really early and you had this huge grind left above you. Whereas now the progression of coming out of the campaign, the first time you play it, and most people will skip the campaign after they've done it for the first time, but the progression from campaign into sort of the mid-game of difficulties is much smoother. Now, you might say that this is not an important point because like I said, people are just going to skip the campaign, and you know, who cares? People already know what the game is. It's all about in-game, etc. But for people that are coming into the game now, and yes, there's still new players that will arrive in games like this. They put it on sale, they have bundles and stuff. It's important to make the beginning experience smoother for people, so that way it's not so abrasive and you don't lose as many players to that abrasion. So I actually think having this be much more streamlined is a big improvement. One of the other improvements I'm noticing is that I'm finding myself doing a much larger variety in terms of activities. They have spaced out where you get different things, so you feel the need to actually try different contents. I'm doing the torment bosses to try to get uniques or mythic drops. I'm doing the pit in order to get my glyphs upgraded and get some experience. I'm doing the infernal hordes to get masterworking materials. I'm doing the helltide for whispers and to get forgotten souls. So I'm finding myself actually interacting with all of the content, with one exception, which is the nightmare dungeons. I actually think they get overshadowed by the infernal hordes. I would not do the dungeons because I can just get way more materials, the opposite side, for instance, for masterworking from the infernal hordes. I would say that, okay, maybe we can put a little bit more love in the nightmare dungeons, but to be honest, I feel like dungeons were the worst part of the game literally already. Anyway, people didn't like running the dungeons, but ironically enough, the dungeons are actually massively improved as well, because now they're much more just go to the end and kill the guy. They're closer to like a pit or a rift now. You don't have to do this super annoying pick up this thing and go somewhere else unless you want to get an extra bonus chest. For the most part, it's just blast through, be done with the dungeons, which feels significantly better than having to play this stupid mini game of like backtracking a million times. So funny enough, the dungeons feel better, but you don't actually have to do them because they're the least important part of the game now. The addition of the Undercity is actually super nice as well. I really like the way they're going with target farming, which is they're adding things like the mercenary bartering system or the Undercity, for instance, in which you can sort of pick the type of item you're trying to farm, pseudo, through the bargain system, and this will give you a reason to do something, which is basically the pit again. I mean, if you do the Undercity, it's just another rift. Like, how many ways can you cut a pizza, right? How many different ways can we do a dungeon